A quick thank you to our sponsor, Vetsy. If you've ever wished there was a faster way to get reliable answers during a busy day, that's exactly what Vetsy is built for. Vetsy is an AI platform that gives veterinarians instant access to trusted medical information trained from licensed textbooks and peer-reviewed resources you already know and trust. Instead of spending extra time searching or juggling tabs, Vetsy helps simplify daily research and cut down on administrative work so you can work more efficiently and focus more on what you do best. If you're curious, you can learn more or apply at Vetsy.com and use promo code VETLIFE, all one word, to get your first month for just $1. Look for a link in the show notes.
When I look at innovation, it's all around us, and I think that the companies have a role to play. The challenge is not all companies are treating it equally. For the individual veterinarian, my hope and really advice is,
welcome to Vet Life Reimagined. It's a new year and a busy conference season has started. It's the perfect time to explore new ideas, expand your network, and think bigger about your career and the future of the profession. That's why today's guest, Candise Goodwin, is perfect to bring on Vet Life Reimagined right now. Candise has worked across every corner of the field, from launching tech platforms to advising investors to helping veterinarians turn their vision into action. Today, she is the founder of Outlier Advisors, a strategy and marketing firm that's been helping businesses from startups to the largest companies in the industry make bold, thoughtful moves in the pet and veterinary industries. Her career path is nonlinear, entrepreneurial, and full of lessons that can help all of us think more strategically. Whether you're building a business or trying to build a more meaningful career, Candise has a special behind-the-scenes vantage point and is very in touch with what's happening in the pet and vet worlds, so listen closely. This conversation is inspiring, practical, and energizing with someone who truly sees what's possible in this profession and is helping others make it real. So let's get to the conversation with Candise Goodwin. You kind of stumbled your way into veterinary medicine, and I've interviewed several people who that has happened to before as well. So kind of backing up even before you met VetMed, you grew up in Las Vegas, and I know that you had an interest in medicine in general. So do you mind sharing a little bit about growing up and what got you interested in at least the human medicine side?
I grew up in Las Vegas, which is such a fascinating place to grow up. And in a lot of ways, it's very unusual. And I think at the time you don't realize it, right? And so I grew up the youngest of 5, very close with my siblings. But I think from the young age, I realized that I didn't have a lot of expectations put on me, which was kind of freeing after the fact. I think when you look back and you say, well, how did I get here? And stumbled is a perfect word. Megan, I love that so much because it is. I don't think we talk enough about what's real. And I mean, stumbled is exactly the right word. So I started in college actually as a business major. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew my siblings. I went to college and it seemed like the right thing to do. And so I went I went in as a business major because I figured, well, business is everywhere. And it's funny because I'm not that old, although I feel very old sometimes, but the world was just so different. We didn't have, all this information at our fingertips. And I went to public school. We didn't have a fancy college counselor. It was okay, I'll go to college and I'll figure it out, which in some ways is the best gift ever, honestly, I'll have to say. So yeah, I went in as a business major and business came very naturally to me. I really enjoyed it. And then one of my core requirements was a biology course. And I have to tell you, I hated biology in high school. Funny enough, school was very easy for me. The only C I ever got in my life was in biology in high school. And I realized now I had a terrible teacher who did not love the subject, it was just a very challenging class for me. And I think part of it was I just hadn't learned how to memorize and do the work because I naturally had gotten things very simply and easily. But going into college, I hated the idea of taking a biology class, right? But I fell in love with it. I had a great, amazing teacher, and I literally just fell in love with science, I think, at the end of the day. And so, went on to tutor in microbiology, and I thought I wanted to become a doctor at the time because there were 3 biology majors available. That was it. The world was so different. It's so hard now. We have so many choices. We had general biology, pre-professional biology, and there might have been a third. There might have only been 2. But at the end of the day, I loved solving problems. And to me, medicine was very much about solving problems. If I can figure something out, I'm at my happiest. If I have nothing to figure out, I don't know what I would do with myself. So make something up to figure out. So I really thought I wanted to go to medical school. At the same time, I loved, I loved families, and I was, with my high school sweetheart, we wanted to get married and have babies. And I just knew logically that like there was no way to have a bunch of little kids and go to medical school. And so I had a friend who, we were getting close to graduation. I decided, well, I'm not going to go to medical school. Like, what the hell do you do with a biology degree? And I had a friend who said, well, I'm going to be a pharmaceutical rep. And I was like, oh, what's that? And so I have kind of this a really special talent of asking people questions. And I think you have that talent too. And just when you really listen, you learn a lot of things. And so, yeah, I thought, well, that sounds interesting. And I ended up actually going and doing diagnostics first, just pure luck, kind of looking what was out there. I did a microbiology internship at the Water District after college. Realized I did not want to work in a laboratory setting. I was much too social, but yeah, and then fell into diagnostics because that was, the opportunity that was out there, and started setting up physician office labs back when that was in vogue and you did in-office testing. My favorite thing was I set up student health centers for rapid STD testing for college students. And we had like a test and treat strategy of, test, get a result, and do a one-dose treatment. You could go on with your life. So definitely that problem-solving ability. So yeah, that's kind of the medical perspective. And from there, I went on to become a pharmaceutical rep. Back when it was a lot of fun to be a pharmaceutical rep, we had a lot of ability to kind of have great conversations with doctors. And I love the science and business combination, so it was kind of a perfect fit. And then I went on to do managed care and key opinion leadership in the pharma space. And I did everything from Parkinson's drugs, working with neurologists, to allergy and asthma medications back when Allegra was a prescription medication. So yeah, it was really interesting. I learned a lot.
Yeah, when you said pharmaceuticals, it made me think, oh, that is kind of like a combination of business and medicine. And my dad is a child psychiatrist, so I grew up in kind of seeing that evolution of how doctors could interact with pharmaceutical reps. So I remember getting the free stuff way back.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he would take us to his meetings, and we would trick or treat around the expo hall and get stuff. But anyway, a long time ago for me too. So then I think you had a decision to pause and raise your kids for a while, and especially in an industry where there's a lot of women, and we're starting to have more of these conversations. Do you mind just sharing a little bit about that decision?
Yeah. So I had four kids in my 20s. So I had 4 children in 6 years because I love big families and I love chaos, apparently, which is the best decision I think we ever made. And so, being a pharma rep was a great job for a long time because, I could be home and pick them up, after school and do my notes at night. And it was a really great career path for a working mom. But then I was lucky enough, my husband had gotten a promotion, and I also was just so frustrated because of those changes in the pharma guidelines. We went from really adding value to just being an infomercial. And I just remember, like, I could not get out of my car one day and just go waste somebody else's time again when my kids were ready for me to pick them up after school, right? So for me, it was just a natural, like, I'm going to take a break. I decided to homeschool my kids because I'm crazy. And at the time, now it's very commonplace. My oldest kid is turning 30 in February. So this is where it was like sexy and cool to homeschool your children. But I was lucky enough to find really a great solution. They'd been in Catholic school and they were very bored. So I homeschooled my kids for a few years, and really great memories and times. I think they each got to kind of get out of jail, as I called it, because I think school was pretty torturous. So my husband was in construction at the time, and we had kind of the recession happen. And in Vegas, it was definitely impacted more than other parts of the country. And I just had to go back to work financially. And so I didn't want to go back into pharma, and started taking a look around, like, what were these transferable skills that I had learned? And I was lucky enough to fall into animal health, literally stumble into it. I went to work for Innovation Plow before we were Merck Animal Health. And all of those lessons I had learned early days in pharma were now applicable to animal health because, of course, we didn't have any of those same constraints. But it was also a much smaller industry. And the thing I loved most about it was we actually got to have those business conversations. I mean, on the human side, right, like doctors had no choice. It was all managed care driven. And you really had this weird dynamic where you couldn't talk about, like, you knew their prescribing habits, but you couldn't tell them you knew their prescribing habits. So I just didn't like the lack of transparency there. So I always remember going to ride along, and Innovation Plow was a fabulous company. They had just really the best science and really great long-term reps. And I was in a smaller territory. Vegas was one of the smaller markets, I would say, but I went to work with Chuck in Arizona who'd built the company like 20 plus years, and riding through like a small town, he pulls out like the sales log for, what this vet had bought. And he walks in, and he like puts it down. He's like, "What happened? Why'd you stop buying my product?" And I was like, "Oh my God, like you could do that? That's craziness." So yeah, it was really this combination of science and medicine. And what I found is veterinarians were phenomenally amazing, smart people. And the industry was wildly different back then. It was primarily men. I mean, the owners, I was reflecting back before our conversation. I mean, the vast majority of veterinarians were men, and a vast majority of owners were men. When I look back, it was very different in how we approached, product sales. But I also think at the end of the day, it was fascinating how so many of those folks, they were good businessmen as well, but they didn't understand how to communicate the value of these new products we were bringing to market to the pet parent. And so when we became Merck, I was there 5.5 years, and we launched about 7 products over the time I was there. And these were innovative products, right? This was like the vet pen. This was, Orbaxol suspension. This was the canine influenza vaccine. So these were like just really differentiated products that we had to convince not just the veterinarian to bring in, but they had to be able to convince the pet owner that they should do this new treatment or therapy. And so I love that business side. And so I really found my niche in helping them communicate that value to the pet parent, or putting it in their protocols, or, just a way to systematize kind of innovation in the practice. And I got a lot of really joy out of that, quite frankly, because there was nothing better than seeing, a canine influenza vaccine. At the time, it was, really a scary disease. And it was great when veterinarians kind of decided that they were going to protect pets under their care with that. So
I think this is a skill that you've completely mastered, that, the ability to communicate the value of something. Like, you have to do this in so many ways now, understanding the veterinary perspective, understanding the pet owner perspective, understanding like the business perspective, and you have to like communicate all across those intersections. So how do you approach that? And how do you not only approach it yourself, but how do you start to teach someone how to do that?
Oh, it's great. Those are two good points. So I would say it goes back to really going in with an open mind and asking questions, and just kind of where I started, I think, is where it all comes back to, is just being really curious and interested in how things work and why things are the way they are. And so for me, Outlier Advisors, 3.5 years consulting, it's a different business than obviously I've been in up until this point. But in some ways it's all the same, right? Which is, I want to take a look at what's there. I want to understand what your perspective is and what really problem that the solution is solving. There's a framework called Jobs to be Done that I just love. It's Clayton Christensen, Harvard Business Review, but it gets at the core of why people do the things they do. And so if you can understand the motivations of all of those stakeholders, again, veterinarians, they just really want to make pets better. Like, at the end of the day, every veterinarian I've known, and I've worked so closely with so many, that's like what their driving force is. Pet parents, they just want them to feel better. And then you sometimes have this great product or solution, and they get lost in the science. I'll say, for a consulting firm, that's the number one thing. We love working with really smart people who have the best products, but the best products don't usually win, because if you focus on the product and you're not understanding like the need of why a veterinarian would want to use that, and the need of why a pet parent would love to pay for that, then you're never going to get that innovation into the market. And so it's, don't go off preconceived notions, like keep an open mind and just ask questions, but then ask the fourth question. I think people sometimes, they ask a question and they stop and they go, okay, well, it's going to be rude if I ask that next question, but it's not going to be rude if you're curious and really interested. And then, taking the time to tie that back to what you already know. And for veterinarians particularly, I think, is that trusting yourself, that you can figure things out, that like, that's really what got you here.
Mm. So for you personally, I'm sure that's one of the things that you used as a characteristic to go through this career path. I mean, you've been able to work with so many different companies, and some of that is with Merck. They, I think, acquired a few businesses and all sorts of things that kind of happened. But, what were some of the things that you were learning personally, maybe like what you were interested in doing well in, but also learning about the environment you found yourself in of animal health?
Yeah, Merck was a great company, and it still is a great company. I was very lucky. We're a pretty small organization. It was a small industry back then. And I learned a lot of great lessons. I think one of the best lessons I learned early on was working with distributors. Back in the industry, back when I started in distribution, ruled the world. We had a home again microchip, so we had to sell direct, or home again microchip, which was actually really a great product to sell in. But I'll never forget one of my distributor reps. I made the mistake of like sending an email about a promotion or something and having all of their names on the email, right? And I had two distributor reps who lived in town and they were like legends. And I never like will forget Mary saying, let me just tell you, if you ever send an email to me with Liz's name on it again, I will not ever work with you. And that was important to her, right? And so I learned that I better start asking everyone questions about how things work. So that was just one pivotal moment, I think. But I had many, I was lucky enough to move up to corporate and national accounts within about a year. And again, I got to know a Rosso who was like a legend in the industry. And we had a lot of conferences in Las Vegas and I lived in Las Vegas. And I just said, hey, how can I help you? Like, let me schlep your stuff, send it to my house. I'll set up the booth with no expectations. I mean, literally, I just wanted to learn and understand and be in the room. And so when they opened up a second position, it was a natural fit. I knew the job. I had already had relationships internally. That gave me an opportunity to just learn so much. There was only two of us at Merck. There were only about 5 national account managers in the country. And so I got a chance to lead all of the emerging groups for Merck, which was everybody except for VC and Banfield. And so again, I just got a chance to like go and learn and understand. And I love being the new kid. I just love asking questions and trying to figure it out. And so yeah, I got a chance to lead buying groups, and then I managed distribution and did, part of the global launch team for Prevecto. And so I think for me, it's just showing up and asking questions and adding value, and things kind of unlock from there. And then taking a chance. So I left Merck to go to work for Vets First Choice, which was an account that I managed as well for Merck. And I got to know the team there very well and really believed in what they were doing. And so a lot of my career has just really been showing up and having people give me the opportunity to figure things out. And if you let me figure things out, I'm going to do it as good as anybody else. I hope better, but I think that's really my sweet spot is when people, had put me in a position and given me the control and power to tell us what needs to happen here. That's really my sweet spot.
I also sometimes really love being the new person, or some people laugh at this, but like being the dumbest person in the room, because you can be like, I'm the new kid. I'm going to ask all these questions. And honestly, for the most part, I have found that people actually like that. They like being able to share what they know. And they appreciate it when people are genuinely interested in learning. And then they take it and, it's not just like, okay, it was story time and then you do absolutely nothing with it. But when they see that you've, like you're actually putting this into action, it's really rewarding for other people. That's amazing that you are able to move that fast. And it sounds like a lot of it is being willing to ask questions and show up, do the work. So Vet's First Choice, which is now Covetrus, I believe. There's like so many evolutions. So I'm curious, just if you don't mind sharing a little bit of your journey and just watching the evolution of veterinary medicine within just, I think you said 15 years.
Yeah.
Like this is pretty amazing. Like, can you share that and kind of like through your own career journey, showing the evolution that you're seeing?
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that so much. I think it's interesting. It really is interesting. Merck, 5.5 years. Again, just in my time at Merck, moving from a field rep up into a national account manager. Again, watching the type of products we were bringing into market and sitting in those rooms thinking about like distribution of Prevecto, and are we going to Activil? Are we going to have track and trace technology, like channel questions, who should be selling and stocking this product? And then, Vets First Choice was a big shift, right? Like they wanted to change the world, and it was about 30 people. I was there, they just got their first big round of funding, and it was a ton of fun, but it was a huge learning curve for me. I mean, I went from a company that, I could have some control over how I communicated and the type of materials I used, but moving to a startup, it was like you were given free reign, but also full responsibility to figure it out very quickly. And I was with very smart people. And so the goal was to really change the way that consumers receive pet medications and to make it easier for pet parents to have access to the great products. And that was pretty revolutionary at the time. Like, this is pre-MAP policy. This is 2015. And so when I look at the evolution of the industry, even just getting manufacturers to like work with us was challenging. And so I led the corporate account strategy and, really build out, as well as kind of working with the manufacturers to help them understand what was happening. Pet meds, 1-800-PET-MEDS was the big threat at the time. And, I remember my corporate pitch decks at corporate groups around like, hey, pet meds is the enemy, which is so funny because now we have Chewy, which Chewy's obviously 1,000 times better at what they do than early companies were out there. When I looked at the shift, the things we were bringing to the market, people were not ready for. I mean, it was like revolutionary, this idea of like, oh, we're going to cannibalize our pharmacy. We sell everything. People trust us. They're going to buy, everything from us. So as I look at where we are today, obviously a material shift. And then I went to work for VIP Pet Care. VIP at the time was the largest provider of mobile veterinary services in the country. And we saw about 1 million pets a year at pop-up clinics in retailers across the country. And so again, when I looked at scale and size and the ability to kind of move to the veterinary side of the table, like that was a ton of fun. I led our e-commerce online pharmacy as well as our vendor relationships. And then we got acquired by PetIQ within about 6 months, and we went out and built the first Walmart vet clinics. So within about 3 months, we opened about 20 clinics in Walmarts across the country. And so, again, how do you move very quickly to make changes and help our veterinarians who were in the offices, like, treat the patients in front of them? So, yeah, again, I just got a chance to kind of, when things needed to be fixed, I said, hey, let me help. Let me try and figure it out. And I got a chance to go do and try a lot of things. Not all of them were successful, and many of them, unfortunately, we didn't get the runway to kind of get to market. But like the things I believed in 2019 are still true today. I think of what pet owners want and need. I did like about 7 jobs while I was there. But I think what I would say is the theme is the same, right? Like pet owners want great solutions. They want them when and how they want them, and they want care where and how they want it as well. So whether it's in a Tractor Supply, getting your puppies vaccinated, or at one of the IQs we opened in Walmart, like I want to go in and get a sick pet pack. One of the things I was really proud of is I stood up a sick pet pack at our Walmart vet clinics. It was like $55. You could walk in, you could see a vet, you could get basic in-house diagnostics, and you get a prescription to go to the pharmacy of your choice to buy the pet medications your pet needed, and ear skin, GI, UTI. But we could do it profitably, right? So we had to figure out ways to innovate and also keep affordability in mind. And then again, I was lucky enough to wind up at Petco pre-IPO, and Petco needed help with figuring out their pharmacy solution. They had bought Dr. Foster's and Smith, and then they had shut that down and spun up a joint venture with Express Scripts. So I had a big opportunity to go figure things out again and make it better for pet parents. And our veterinarians, too, were really central to us. Dr. Whitney Miller was my chief veterinarian when I was at Petco, and I mean, she's just an amazing veterinarian. And the same at VIP, I had Dr. Katie Flair. So I've been lucky enough to have some really great medical knowledge on the other side as we figured out some really hard things.
Yeah, I think you have pet folk on your resume too, which also is a very innovative, creative veterinary team. You mentioned, you tried some things that worked and then tried some things that didn't. And in an interview that I've heard you on, you mentioned that one of your favorite topics to speak on is actually failure. Why is that your favorite topic to speak on in your experience?
Because we don't talk about it enough. We all see like the highlight reel of each other's lives, and it's so frustrating. It's so challenging for the younger generations, particularly, right? I really find that, especially for veterinarians and especially for the younger veterinarian, like there's a huge confidence gap and there's this huge perfectionism. If you're not a perfectionist, you're not getting to veterinary school, right? And I think that all of those things that got us there are the things that are going to hold us back the most. And so it's not just about failing, it's about learning, and it's about showing up authentically. It's okay not to be perfect, like in everything we do, right? And so it's the hardest lesson we all have to learn, but it's the humanity that drives us closer. And so, yeah, I mean, I think if you think everyone's winning in their perfect self all the time, then you're just going to feel like crap. And I don't like when people feel like crap. And all of those lessons that I've learned, and I continue to learn, God, I feel like I'm done learning. I learn every day. That's it. And I think once you get to sit down with somebody and like have a deep conversation and they understand like, wow, that's okay. Like this person has had like something go horribly wrong, and like they're here and they're smiling and life goes on. We just need more of that. I just think we need more of that in the world, quite frankly.
The fear of failure is such a big one, especially in veterinary professionals, because a lot of times we feel like that failure is probably two. Sadly, this may feel about equal. Is one, we have life in our hands sometimes. The other one, I think, just the nature of our personalities is that we're going to let someone down. And I said, sadly, I think sometimes that feels about equal. Is like death and letting people down. But, that's hard. And I think both are valid concerns, right? At the same time, we're human. If we can embrace it as learning and communicate through it as much as possible. The other thing that is so interesting when I think about failure is, and I think you're a perfect person to ask this about, because again, you kind of are also at the in-between veterinary pet owner and then the business world, this crazy, weird pet industry that seems so mysterious and siloed over here away from vet. And I think there's also a challenge, the people on the business side are also human, and they may also do things that don't work out. And we have such a challenge, again, all three groups of trust. You even mentioned a challenge of the veterinary team conveying how much they care about the pet and the health to the pet owner. There's a disconnect there. When you are thinking about trust in all of this, what are you seeing is the best things that we can do to improve upon that?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so much there. First of all, I think the failure in letting people down. I think at the end of the day, those are two of the most dangerous combinations. I think it's like 1 + 1 equals not just three, it equals a lot more than that. I mean, I think what that does is makes people smaller, right? It makes people like less likely to connect with others and feel more standoffish, for lack of a better term. I think we are protective when we're in that mode, which I think is what pet owners sense, right, at the end of the day. And so I was at a conference, I don't know which one because I've been to too many, but there was a speaker on stage and they asked her about failure or something to that effect. And she said, you cannot keep all the balls in the air. You will drop balls. And I mean, you are going to drop some balls. And her point was just don't drop the glass ones, which I love because I think it's so important. Like, what is the priority? What are those glass balls in your life that you cannot drop or in your career? But the rest of them are going to fall. And like, you're going to have to laugh about it or you're going to like drive yourself nuts. And so, back to trust for me, it goes back to I think the veterinary profession, one of the challenges that I see across the board is, the way that the education system works, what the veterinary student is exposed to, and the companies that they have access to are very limited. And so at a very formative age, they see good, bad, right, wrong, black, white, which is not the world we live in. And so I think about trust, it really is about not just believing that like ivory tower medicine must be done or you are a bad person or you're a bad veterinarian, because I think that's where the gap is, right? I think we have so many solutions, but so many veterinarians get, I don't want to say indoctrinated, but it's indoctrinated in some ways, right? Like very early in vet school, like if I don't do this advanced diagnostic, then I'm not doing my job. And that's not the truth, right? The truth is you need to treat the pet in front of you. And you already probably have a ton of information in your head about what this might or could be or could not be. And so to me, it's really about bringing the pet owner into that journey and talking through what their goals are, making sure that you understand and give options to pet parents, right? So trust to me is, my mother passed away and, I spent a lot of time in the hospital talking with medical staff. And I mean, the best you get out of a medical team is when you can ask genuine, thoughtful questions and they're advocates and helpers for you, right? And so I think there has to be education for pet parents around how to do that, but there has to be receptivity from a veterinarian to really be a partner and care for a pet, not the center of the universe, right? And so if you can think of yourself that way and you can use your team that way, that is going to be the biggest difference of trust. And a big part of it is time, right? I mean, unfortunately, we have so many distractions in clinics that it gets so challenging sometimes just to like be present with a pet owner in the room. And that's where I'm really excited about some of the new veterinary care models because I think they've really taken that customer experience and made it not just all about being in the four walls at that one moment. And how do you actually have the conversation before you get in the practice, after you get out of the practice, and continue that dialogue. But I think for the veterinarian specifically, trust has to be, if someone's feeding a raw diet and you think it's a terrible choice, like maybe understand why they're feeding it and how it's working for them, right? And like, instead of being judgmental, and I know obviously the nutrition front is like, we could talk forever about this, but I just, the older I get, there's no good or bad, right? It's like back to like, why are they doing this? How's it working for them? And like, what can I actually do to make this pet's health better and not fight about the one thing that I think is stupid that a pet owner is doing?
Yes, I'm so glad that we're starting to talk about that more in veterinary medicine about the leaving judgment at home.
Yes,
Actually, don't even
yes,
leave it at home. Just get rid of it.
yes.
No judgment. Because again, I think this is such a common theme. This is why I think this is a value word for me, is just staying genuinely curious. Like ask the pet owner, not in a judgmental way, like, why are you doing
Yes.
that? It's like,
Yes.
oh, okay. So what are you liking about that? Or what were the problems that you were seeing before that? Or, trying to really put the puzzle piece together so that you can best guide the pet owner. And if you understand the problem, more intimately, you're able to help with a better solution that the pet owner is also more interested to partake in, which builds that trust. And I think on the flip side too, when we're thinking about businesses creating products or services, you have to understand the challenge that you're trying to create the solution for. I think you mentioned that, right? Like you can have this amazing solution, but if you haven't taken into account everything for the person that you're trying to solve it for, it's not going to fly. It's not going to work. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think again, it's just, I think assume good intent and show up with kindness. And I think that's the message for 2026 as well is, how can we all just see the other human in front of us and try and help them, right? And that's what gets me up every morning. That's what I love about my business is I love helping people reach their goals. And I think understanding what that goal is, and it goes back to, what does the pet owner want for their pet? And I don't think it's not a financial barrier all the time. I loved Charisse Roth from Mars. We had a conversation about accessibility and affordability of care. And she used something that really struck with me is people have three budgets. They have a financial budget. Yes, everyone really has a financial budget. No matter how much we talk about we'd spend anything, like we can't. There's a time budget. Like, it is very hard to be a pet parent with a special needs pet or a pet with a severe anxiety. Like there's only so much time in the day. And then there's an emotional budget. And we don't talk enough about the emotional budget. And to me, that just really nailed the point. And I think, we focus a lot on financial budgets and accessibility and affordability to care, but many times it's not the money that's the issue. And there's other ways I think we can approach those situations.
What a great way of putting it too, because it made me come back to the veterinary professional, right? I think we all have that too.
Yes.
We all have an emotional budget
Yes.
and a time budget too, and being very mindful. And again, going back to what are the biggest priorities
Yes.
that we need to juggle, and which ones, if they drop, it's not the end of the world. And the other thing too is you were kind of earlier, you talked about pet owners want the care they want, when they want it, where they want it, all that kind of thing. But there's not just like one pet owner that they all want the same thing.
Yes.
There's going to be different wants and needs. So veterinarians are trying to understand all of the different needs, listen and make sure that if they can't support that they can at least maybe refer them to somewhere that they can. Businesses, I think the pet industry is just, it feels like it's booming a little bit. Like there's a lot of people trying to get in. You said it was such a small industry when you started. It's big. And I think there's some economy things that people, based on some data that came out, people are kind of hesitant to do some things, especially on the larger scale. But I think it also opens up more opportunity for the smaller people who can move fast and learn how to get the resources they need to create some solutions, which to me is, as someone who likes entrepreneurs, gets really excited about too. What are you seeing on the business side of things? What's kind of like the key to success that you're seeing from the pet industry side of things? Again, I love to highlight this because the vet industry doesn't always get to kind of understand that side of the equation. So what do you see when you're working with businesses of all sizes? What are kind of the keys to success to coming up with some solutions that we're going to really appreciate in the coming years?
The point you made about it's about personalization. And I think it's actually about hyper personalization right now, right? People, and I get a billion newsletters this time of year from folks and, from veterinarians I love and trust are like, here's some pet health tips. Like, no, I want to know about my Dash dog. I want to know about like how you're going to help Dash dog. I don't care about pet health. Like nobody cares about generalities anymore. So I think the people that I'm seeing be successful on the pet side are really focused on hyper personalization, and on the retail side specifically, like there is so much data out there that people now have the ability to help understand what your needs are and feed those back to you. So hyper personalization matters, and I go back to like even Petco days. We had different type of shoppers. We had a natural pet shopper. We had a science-based pet shopper, right? And so you're never going to move a science-based pet shopper into a natural category. It's not going to happen. But if you're talking in generalities to both as if they're just pet parents, you've missed an opportunity, right? So I think that we have, as a society, we have less patience, we have less focus, and we want to know that you know and care about my Dash dog. It's not about a dog, it's not about a German Shorthair Pointer, but about my 4-year-old dog who loves to sleep under the covers, right? Like that ability to connect one-on-one at that level is super meaningful. And I think we're seeing more tailored solutions out of those type of opportunities. So I always say the riches are in the niches. It's like niche down and like actually figure out what's the one pain point for that one pet or pet parent. And then they will love your product or solution. Like, don't solve all the things, solve one thing and solve one real thing that I need solved right now. I think the other is just in time or hyper fast, right? So I don't want to know all the pieces of information. Like, please don't give me like, here's your puppy's first year. I can't imagine my puppy's first day. So I want to have information and products available just when I need them. Like, it's great to let me know about them ahead of time, but don't try to give me everything. We all use bite-sized bits of information because we don't have to have it all at once. And so how do you think about, the most successful companies are breaking it down of like, right now I have a question, I need to go get that answer, or I need to buy that product. It's no longer about, here's the 25 things you need for your puppy. So that's really where I see these products coming out that are very focused and specialized for specific need states of pets. I'm excited in the veterinary profession. Ease Vet, I just met Brandy from Ease Vet. And like, wow, I mean, talk about a really cool, amazing, differentiated business, but like there's real meat behind it, but they fully understand the customer. They fully understand the pain of that customer. But in the pet product space, the same is true. We see like Woof is one of my favorite brands. If you haven't, WOOF, they started with a popsicle, which is, kind of an elevated Kong, you could argue, but like it's so thoughtfully designed and like their marketing is like 20 minutes of peace for you, for your active pet, right? And now they've layered in like health conditions. So I think it's like kind of that reverse engineering of like jobs to be done. Like, why do I buy a toy for my dog? I buy a toy for my dog for one of two reasons: to distract him or to feel good. That's it. That's all I care about. So I think it really, the companies services I see are really getting hyper focused on that. I was just at Pet Connect in LA and I got invited to Dog People, which is like a dog social club, which is so cool. I got a chance to go and see like their clubhouse holiday market opening, which was like so fun and amazing to see these different walks of life and people together and dog shopping. And so, again, understanding like why somebody would want to do that thing is so important. And the companies that are figuring it out really know who that someone is. And that's the most important thing, I think, at the end of the day.
Do you foresee this hyper personalization getting into the veterinary clinic? Because you would think that the vet clinic knows so much about that pet. Like, why are we not optimizing?
And I think smart businesses are, to be clear. I mean, I think PetFet's a great example. I think Modern Animal, I mean, all the usual players, but there's also newer innovations. Like when I look at what's happening in the UK and even some of the newer players here, they are that hyper-personalized, right? Like Modern Animal, I mean, because you have to have an app, Chewy Vet Care, right? I mean, Chewy Vet Care, like you don't go in without creating an account first for Modern Animal either, right? And it's not just about the pet, it's about the pet parent, right? Because it's about the pet parent. They're the ones who are deciding. It's not about if I have a bulldog or if I have a Frenchie. It's like, I work all day and I want to make my dog feel good when I walk in the door. Like that's why I'm doing something, right? Like I want to feel like a good pet parent. So I think it's that focus on the pet parent, not on the pet, that the veterinarian hasn't figured out. It's fascinating, right? Because you have veterinarians know everything about the pet, right? And then you have retailers, old brick and mortar retailers. They had a challenge, right? But e-commerce giants have the ability to know the consumer, right? Like where I live, what I buy, all of these things. And so I think what's interesting is when you combine those and the pet and the pet parent, and that's where you see the Chewies of the world coming in that can really create those special moments for pet parents. That's where it gets really interesting, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Of course, we come into the veterinary industry with love of animals, but more and more, it really is a human-to-human business, making sure not to forget that part of I think the other end of the leash is that what the phrase is so crucial. And when hopefully we improve this trust, this relationship, our pre-call together, you said we're really at a crossroads in veterinary medicine. And feel free to kind of elaborate and pull this all together from that. But I really do think there's a lot of things changing. There's a lot of data. The pet owner has certain expectations that currently a lot of the veterinary industry is not quite coming up to. So here we are, like, what are we going to do? How do we want to be part of pet health? Like, do we want to stay this way? Do we want to do it something differently? But yeah, just kind of summarizing the crossroads that you were thinking about. What do we have to decide here?
I think there's two layers, right? Like with everything. I mean, we have the corporations, because veterinary is big business, right? I mean, there are major corporations out there that have a lot of ability to influence how we move forward. And I think there's some folks that are doing a really great job of understanding and innovating. And it's not always the startups. It's fascinating. I did a talk at that forum earlier this year, and it was around client experience is the growth strategy, right? And I start with the thesis of like, oh, it's all the de novos. And many of them, they were doing great things, but there are still gaps in what they're offering. But when I look at some of the older players like Mars as an example, like VC and Banfield, I see them continuing to innovate to meet the modern pet parents' needs, whether it's launching senior wellness plans or whether it's redoing their app to be more information available for pet owners or changing their wellness plans to like have an affordable option, online booking. So I think when I look at innovation, it's all around us. And I think that the companies have a role to play. And I think, the challenge is not all companies are treating it equally. Things like price transparency, right? Like to me, price transparency is like one of those issues I know we can solve. I mean, we will have to solve, but like people are already getting in front of it. But I think the disruptors of the de novos, there's new disruptors out there that are doing things better. Instead of like 6 clicks to book an appointment, it's 1 click, right? Like being much more truly consumer focused. And then I look at the veterinarian who's in practice. My heart goes out to the veterinarian in practice. I think that's where I have the most compassion and frustration for them right now because I think they're stuck in the middle. And I think being stuck in the middle is a sucky place to be. And that's where I think, like, how can you on a daily basis have the impact you want with the constraints of the system you work within and the employer you work for? And so I do think it's an important time to take a look. If you have flexibility in your career and where and how you want to practice medicine, like now's the time to do it. Like we're seeing a resurgence in private individually owned practices and new business models. And there's such an innovation happening there, I think, with veterinarians that are like, I could do this better, right? And there's like the cost of entry is so low. So I think for the individual veterinarian, my hope and really advice is take a look around you. And if you're not where you want to be, figure out where you want to be. Because you can't fight City Hall is like one of my favorite sayings I tell anyone in their career. Like, you can't fight City Hall. It's great to show up and think you're going to like rage against the system. But if you work in a company you have no power, no control, and no voice, then find a different company. Like, it is that simple. Or make a company. And if you can't do that, because not everyone has that luxury or capability, like find your people and build a community of people and find other ways to bring joy into your life and meet those needs. Because I think we just have to be realistic. In 2026, like the system took a long time to build and it's going to take a long time to change. And so where and how you can have an impact, like let's do that. You can show up different every day at work. You can really ask a different question every day, but you also need your people. I love self-care, but I think it's like other care. Honestly, I think we've gotten too involved in like self-care. Like self-care is great. I can put on so much cream and put on music, but like I need to take care of someone else and we need to be part of something together that like then we feel good. So to me, we're so isolated. And so it's funny, we have so much technology at our fingertips and we've never been more alone. And so I think how can you get back with people and really not just make a difference, but like just have some fun as well. So yeah, I think it's 2-layered. I really do.
Oh, I love that. And I feel like maybe you've taken your own advice. You started your own consulting company. And I've also heard people ask you, this was on the Veterinary Innovation podcast. And Ivan was like, I've been there. So what do you do when they don't take your advice? And you're like, well, I choose my clients wisely. Yeah. You have the ability to pick who you work with, and so that you are also hopefully having fun, but also being able to put your personal values into your work and your purpose and your impact. So anything you want to share about the decision to go into consulting and what you get to do now and what you like about it?
Oh gosh, yeah. Again, like everything, I stumbled into it. After leaving Petco, I worked briefly at We Were One Vet, Not Pet Folk at the time, which again, I think the world of Audrey. And, it just wasn't a fit for a variety of reasons. And I think it was a surprise to both of us. And, at the end of the day, I said, I'm going to figure out what's next. And I thought, just like everyone that figures out what's next is I'm going to do some consulting. And I really thought it was a great way to like test out who I might want to work for next and like what I wanted to do. Cause I think I'd tried, I mean, if you look at my career, it's like, a bigger company at Merck, then I went to a startup, then I went to, startup, then I went to big company, then I went to startup. So I wasn't sure. Honestly, I had no idea when I was back in summer of 2022. I really didn't know. I just knew I liked helping people. And I thought, I'm going to try this. And, immediately it was great. Like my phone started ringing from just a variety of sources of people that I had met and worked with over the years, because what I hadn't realized is I was an entrepreneur, right? Like big companies had hired me to go solve a problem, like a very big, meaty problem, and given me the power and authority and money to do it. And again, not everything worked out like I shared. So all of those lessons I'd learned were so valuable for so many people. And so, yeah, some of my first clients were people that either old bosses that we didn't love each other at the end, or people that I had turned down for projects, when I was making decisions for these big companies asking for my help to figure out, like, why did you turn it down? How can we fix that? So yeah, probably about 6 months in, maybe 3 months in, I was like, wow, there's like a real business here and there's a gap in the market. And, I purposely named my company Outlier Advisors because I do think, how can we help outliers, people who, you don't have to be outside of a system to be an outlier. You just have to have a different point of view. How can I help those people get innovation in market? And, we work with very large public companies all the way down to startups. And this portfolio approach to consulting, I think, is really fun. But David Hayworth one time told me very early days, there's 3 reasons people hire a consultant, and it's also stuck with me. 1, you can do work that they could do, but they don't have the time. That's my least interesting work I do, and I do it rarely. 2 is you can help them do work that they don't know how to do or don't understand how to do. And that's really the sweet spot, because I do know kind of where all the bodies are buried and how things really work versus how they work on the surface. And then 3 is to tell the CEO they're wrong, because no one can do that in a company. And it's true, it's hard. And so, but I think data, and when you hire a consultant, you're really looking for somebody that can give you information to make a decision at its core. That's what great consulting is. I'm going to give you information and help you make a decision. And so those 3 use cases still hold true. And I love all 3. Again, we do some of the outsourced work because, again, there's complexity there. People don't realize sometimes how complicated, different elements can be. But for me, it was important, from the beginning, the business was structured around like deliverables. Like, we don't give advice. We don't, do introductions. We give you real solid, tangible assets that you can use after we roll off a project. Because I think, again, people, like probably with your dad, like with mental health, are you a psychologist, psychiatrist at CB? Like, people don't know or understand the difference of an advisor, a consultant, but I think it's important that, we wanted to structure ourselves in a way that we provide you with things and tools that you can go do what you want to do. Whether that's a decision, whether that's strategic partnerships that you want to go after, whatever that is, branding, messaging, I mean, anything to do with growth and figuring out, how to unlock that growth, which has been a lot of fun. And we've met just some amazing people. I mean, I cannot tell you how much energy I get from entrepreneurs. I love entrepreneurship like you, and the stories and the passion, and people just need a cheerleader sometimes. It's funny. I was a cheerleader very briefly in high school. Then I dyed my hair purple and decided I didn't want to be a cheerleader. But I think, people need more cheerleaders. They need more people to see the great things they're doing and tell them, great job, keep going. I love that. That's the best part of my job. Even if I do a lot of unpaid work and I do a lot of mentoring, and I think there's more people need to tell people, great job. That's really cool what you're doing. And for some reason, we get really self-protective and don't do that. But that's really a big part of what I do.
That can go so far, is telling somebody that they're doing a good job, because whether you're a veterinarian and you're feeling alone and siloed and someone says, thank you, the way you listen to me, that meant a lot to me. That'll keep you going for so it really is a big deal. So I want to thank you so much for what you do. And I'm sure you have an exciting year ahead, both challenging and exciting. I'm glad to know that you'll be a part of it, helping those that are really trying to make real solutions, make it happen. Last question is, what is something you're just really grateful for?
I think this time of year, it's a great time to ask that question. And professionally, I'm grateful that people trusted me to figure things out, just said, you go do it. And I try and give that same grace to folks in my life. I think try not to force solutions or tell people what to do. And so I'm just really grateful that I continue to be given opportunities to figure things out, because again, at the end of the day, I think we all do better when we have some of that agency over our own life. So yeah, that's really what I'm grateful for, I think, this time of year.
I don't know about you, but this episode leaves me with a lot of thoughts. Because Candise is so plugged in, she's able to tell us the good, the bad, the ugly. But I leave feeling like there's a call to action. It's highly possible that if you've been thinking about doing something, learn that new skill, make that connection, volunteer for that committee or initiative, go to that conference, that this is the year to do it. Whether you're stepping into 2026 with a big goal or simply hoping to feel more aligned in your career, Candice's insights are a powerful reminder. Clarity, consistency, and courage can go a long way. As we head into VMX and a new year of opportunities, I encourage you to think about how you're positioning yourself. not just for the job you have, but for the future that you want to shape. The veterinary profession is full of possibilities, and your voice, your ideas, and your leadership matter more than ever. Thanks for listening to Vet Life Reimagined. If this episode resonates with you, share it with a colleague, connect with me at VMX, and don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. That really, really helps. And until next time, keep reimagining what's possible in veterinary life.